don't want to hold up everybody's, and I know everybody's busy, so we might as well get started. So I have this amazing ability. I can spotlight you for everyone, Stephen. I've never tried that button before. That could be fun. But first, let me introduce our speaker for today, and then I'm going to switch him over into host mode so that he's got a presentation to share. So I just want to introduce Stephen Wu, Manager of Economic Development for the City of Surrey. And over the past 6 years, he's been responsible for attracting several high-profile investments to the city, including Skydance Studios, and he led efforts to develop Surrey's first 10-year economic strategy. Currently, I guess we're now in your third year of execution. Is a track record of working on high-profile international and domestic business projects, dealing with technology commercialization, corporate finance, market intelligence, and strategic planning for high growth sectors for public and private sector clients, including clean technology, ICT, and biotechnology. Stephen holds a Bachelor of Science in Cell Biology and Genetics from the University of BC, as well as a Master's of Business Administration and a Master's of Science in Strategic Planning from the Edinburgh Business School in the UK. So without further ado, I'm just going to turn Stephen over to be the host. And welcome, Stephen.
Okay, perfect. I can see I have the power now. So let me just throw up my screen here. Can you see what's on my screen right now?
Yep.
Perfect. And then if I do this, can you see the big screen, or did it minimize into this weird thing?
Sort of, yeah, minimized.
Okay, I'll just do it this way because I know it kind of happens with a dual screen setup. So I'm just going to do it this way. And then go from there. So good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for spending the time out of your precious morning to kind of listen to me talk about something that, I think is quite serious and but at the same time bodes itself to some great opportunities for us here in Surrey as well. So as Scott mentioned, my name is Stephen Wu, and I am the Manager of Economic Development for the City of Surrey. As of March this past year, I was also seconded as the advanced planning lead as part of our city's Emergency Operations Center. So what that means is myself and my team also do a lot of the long range forecasting of where the pandemic's going to go, how do we prepare ourselves in the city, and what do we need to do about that. So as you can imagine, a lot of that work in terms of forecasting deals with the business community. And we always want to have a pulse on what's coming up next, not necessarily what has happened. And so, but however, the only way we can kind of look at what's going to happen next is if we kind of take a step back and kind of look at, what's going on right here, right now. So, if you kind of take a look at Surrey's economy, there we go. And people like to use the word, we need to start on a Surrey economic recovery plan, and we need to kind of recover from these difficult times and whatnot. But I think the size and magnitude of recovery and whether or not we actually need to recover are questions that we need to kind of really ask ourselves, especially when we kind of move forward into the next phase of the pandemic. Now, just looking a little bit of the stats here in Surrey. Surrey actually saw a similar level of business growth between 2020 and 2029. So yes, it's a little bit lower, but we're still in the same range. We're probably a couple hundred businesses short of these kind of numbers. When you look at the mid-November year-to-year building permit values in 2020, we were at 1.14 billion. Compared to the 5-year average for the same time period is about 1.65. So when you kind of look at it, that looks like a lot of money, and that is a lot of money. But when you kind of look at the greater scheme of things, it's in the same ballpark range of, what the development looks like. And I think this was thanks to the fact that construction in British Columbia was deemed essential service. So a lot of development in the community and in Surrey continue to chug on and will continue to chug on over time. When you kind of look at jobs, I know that in the early dark days of COVID, there were a lot of talks about layoffs. There was a lot of talks about businesses needing to kind of temporarily shut down and whatnot. But if you kind of look at the mid to end of November, there were well over 3,600 jobs that were posted for the Surrey market, according to Work BC. And, you know, that's full-time work, 236 part-time work. So when you kind of look at these are still pretty good numbers considering the size of our workforce and what we're looking at. And when you kind of look at the fact that, you know, I think a lot of the jobs that were really impacted were, you know, working class, you know, service industries, a lot of things that, you know, were retail and, you know, more affected by COVID. When you kind of look at the professional services, the majority of them just flipped the switch and started working mobile and doing Zoom calls like we are today, okay? Now, when I kind of talk about demand for real estate and kind of the demand and interest in Surrey, I would say it's at an all-time high. You know, I'm going to be a new Surrey resident very soon. And I can tell you that it was almost impossible to put an offer into buying a place in Surrey because I was trying to outcompete like 4 or 5 other people trying to buy a place in a very tight market. Industrial real estate, which is, you know, something that is our bread and butter here in Surrey, over 2 million square feet of space was absorbed in Q2. So what that means is these are record high numbers and people still are bullish on our economy. And so when you kind of look at that, where do we need to start looking at recovery? Where do we need to kind of start looking at our efforts? Now, I don't want to say that I'm always cautious about kind of putting out, you know, stuff kind of saying, oh, well, we don't really need to recover, you know, our economy is quite well, because the fact of the matter is there's a lot of businesses that are struggling and we recognize that, right? When you kind of talk about businesses, the biggest impact of COVID on the economy is a drop in revenue, disruption in business service, decrease in demand. These are some of the largest things. And these shouldn't be surprising as business owners to yourself, right? And we recognize the fact that when things started to open up, there were a number of actually positive things that happened, such as, you know, businesses being able to reopen, resume important meetings, you know, staff actually showing up to work. But what do we need to do? And what do we need to kind of build our foundation for the next phase of the pandemic? And so one of the things that I don't know if you guys have had the pleasure of, reading about this, but, you know, when I became manager of economic development back in 2017, one of the things that my team did was we actually started kind of consolidating what is our vision for Surrey? What do we want Surrey to become in the next decade? How do we get there? And the idea was that we would create a roadmap for success and kind of how we build on the vision. And the vision that we really wanted to kind of pursue is kind of outlined in the title of our strategy, Building the Next Metropolitan Center. And what that mantra was the fact that, you know, Surrey would become a nexus for commerce where people would come, do business, succeed, do transactions, and also a nationally recognized center for innovation. So this is where people come, innovate, leverage our fine universities and fine research talent that we have in our city and succeed. And so when you kind of apply the lens of our economic strategy, which was intended as a 10-year plan, to the current pandemic, and you look at the actions that we've kind of outlined that would be determining for our success, a lot of these stand true in today's environment in terms of our strategies. And as a matter of fact, they are even more important than ever that we double down on a lot of these activities. We want to grow our investments in the city. We want to grow our innovation economy. We want to build distinct and competitive business communities and competitive businesses. And more so than not, we need to create jobs and develop our workforce, especially in an age of technology change and economic change as well. So when we kind of look at where do we kind of what do we use as our foundation? This is our foundation for surviving through the pandemic and succeeding beyond this. So what have we done? Our actions over the past few months have been kind of split into 4 kind of key areas for dealing with the COVID-19 pandemic. The first is engaging with businesses. Some of you have probably got calls from some of my staff. We've actually called over 400 or 500, actually we're probably close to 500 right now, businesses across the city, and having in-depth conversations with them to kind of really understand what the pain points are, what the challenges are, and how the city might be able to help. We've rolled out a number of programs to kind of target very strategic issues that we're seeing across the city, such as, ability to, for customers to shop local, such as access to PPE, and such as having access to job opportunities through infrastructure projects now and in the future. We're also looking at the future as well. We're looking at how do we start preparing people to understand that Surrey's economy is great, and despite the pandemic will end, and you should still kind of start your business in Surrey. And we've kind of looked at that. We started doing a lot of planning, and we started doing a lot of work in these areas. Now, one of the messages that we are putting out there, and that's kind of why when you kind of look at my presentation up to slide 6, I don't talk about the word economic recovery. And the fact of the matter is part of the messaging that we are putting out to the community is, well, if our economy has been quite strong, relatively strong compared to other areas such as Vancouver, Coquitlam, Burnaby, and others, we have a resilient economy. Come and join us. The fact of the matter is when you come to Surrey, you are set for success, and you can build your company success based on a strong foundation. That is a messaging that we are sending, and these are the data points that we are able to share as well. Now, when you kind of look at particular actions, and I kind of talked about this, I can kind of talk about some of the actions. So the first one is buy local. I think this is very relevant to a lot of your companies. If some of your companies that do a lot of retail or engage with direct customers, we have a program called surreystoretodoor.ca, where businesses are able to list their company online, and we actually actively market the site to our residents and to our neighboring jurisdictions. And since the start of this program, we've had over 25,000 shoppers come and buy off of the site, and they're buying local. They're spending money, and they're spending time looking about these opportunities. The second thing is we actually partnered with Uber, DoorDash, and a number of these companies in the early days of the pandemic. And yes, we recognize the fact that a lot of these companies charge up to 30% of the fee and kind of take a pretty sizable cut into a lot of the revenue from the restaurant. At the time of when we kind of signed up, we partnered with them, the concept was the fact that if you weren't able to even do any sales, your revenue would be zero. So is it better to do revenue of zero, or is it better to have someone take a cut of 30% and still be able to operate? And so we were able to sign up about 500 businesses onto that system in the early days of the pandemic. And these were voluntary. Businesses wanted these services, and they were expedited onto these platforms quite quickly. The second thing that we actually did was we actually started looking at economic opportunities. In Chinese, the word crisis comes with opportunity. And so when you kind of look at that, the opportunity that we saw was a great need for PPE. And actually, in the early days of COVID-19, when one of my first tasks was to look at where we can find PPE for our emergency first responders in Surrey. And I can tell you that there were some really crazy kind of situations where I was working with the province, looking at warehouses of 3M branded N95s in Kenya, and people in suits on a tarmac just snatched them up in suitcases with cash. And this was probably the US government doing that. And so by the time we did the vetting, all the PPEs was gone. So it was really the Wild West. And part of the strategy that we immediately kind of decided was we need to kind of start a local PPE industry in Surrey, and we need to support it. And right now, we have 25 PPE companies spun up since March, making over $11 million in sales. And we even have N95s that are manufactured right here in our backyard in Campbell Heights. In the next 2 months, not only will we have one, but we will have 2 N95 companies that will be able to produce here in our backyard. We're also looking at opportunities for jobs. As you kind of look at the Petula Bridge and a number of other infrastructure projects such as SkyTrain and whatnot, there's a lot of opportunity for us to get a lot of our folks who live in Surrey to work on these infrastructure projects. And when they work in these infrastructure projects, they're also spending money in our local economy as well. And so we want to employ our local individuals our residents, and we want them to spend in our local communities as well. The third thing that we did was we were also looking at building capacity. You know, as small business owners, we understand that it's very difficult for you guys to kind of maybe take a course from SFU or somewhere to kind of really figure out, you know, what to do next. And it can be daunting to kind of really think about, you know, how do I pivot my business? What will happen in a year's time when a lot of customers go and buy from online e-commerce platforms? Do I need to go on e-commerce? And what we've done is we've actually developed a business resource page, and we have actually kind of consolidated a number of free resources for businesses to kind of see, learn, and obtain. We've actually also partnered with Simon Fraser University to deliver a business model innovation workshop, because as we know, a lot of times it's not just about getting your business online. It's about changing and pivoting your business model. It's being more competitive. It's looking at, you know, your bottom line and thinking about, are there new customers? Are there new partners that we can do business with? And having a holistic view of this. And so we actually had a first cohort of 30 businesses sign up for this, delivered by Dr. Sarah Lubick, who some of you might know as one of Canada's top entrepreneurship professors. And that has been so far fantastic. And every business has been able to participate in it, have got a little bit something out of it. And we will be publishing these resources online for other businesses who weren't able to participate in the workshop to kind of deal from as well. The other one is investment attraction. And you know, with us, we have direct mandate from Mayor and Council to really increase our business base in Surrey. Why we want to do that is because Surrey is a great place to do business, and the more businesses we are able to bring in, it creates other supply chain opportunities for the existing businesses within our community, whether you're a printer, a logistics company, or even a catering company. When new businesses come in, they need new services and they need new partners. And that's something that we are actively trying to do. Right before COVID, actually, we had a lot of work that we were doing in the Cascadia area in Washington State, Oregon, and California. We had a lot of companies looking to locate up in Surrey, actually, because we're right next to the US border. And one of the things that we're doing right now is we're continuing those conversations. Even through the pandemic, a lot of American companies are very interested and want to do investments in our community. And as a matter of fact, Scott and I are participating in a regional effort right now known as the Metro Vancouver Regional Prosperity Service, where we're going to be bolstering up the regional assets to attract big investments, big strategic investments into our region as well. Furthermore, you know, a lot of you participated in our SparkBiz program. You know, we actually do calls. We want to hear from you. If you're a business and you want to kind of provide feedback to the city, we want to hear from you. You are part of the community. We want to see how we can kind of do what's right for you guys. And it might not be something that we might be able to do immediately, but if there's an opportunity for us to develop a program, kind of think, you know, outside the box and kind of support businesses, we are there. And finally, one of the things that, you know, I think is not on top of mind as business owner is the fact that, you know, our customers have direct needs. We need to understand our customers, but we also need to understand the business environment and the competitive environment that we are competing in. So one of the things that you're going to see in 2021 is the fact that we are actually going to be releasing a comprehensive economic data framework that will allow businesses to come in and understand the market better. We will be able to provide market intelligence and allow for businesses to better target market and segment out where their opportunities might be within the community. And also recognizing the fact that as a community of over 600,000 people, close to 600,000 people, these people are your customers. How do you understand who these people are and how you can kind of start selling to them? So in general, you know, there's been a lot of impact that we've created as a team here at the city already. You know, $27 million in capital investments that we've actually supported bringing in. We've had over 5,000 community touch points over the past few months. We've talked to over 500. It says 421 here, but you know it's over 500 now as of the past week. You know, $11 million worth of PPE sales, 36,000 shoppers on our platform, and these aren't things that, you know, we're doing just for the city. These aren't city metrics. These are money that is going directly into businesses' hands, and we want to continue being able to do initiatives that are able to kind of support businesses in these ways. So that's my presentation, and I thank you for kind of joining in, and I'll maybe open it up for some questions that you might have for me or for the city. Thank you so much. Oh, Scott, I think you're on mute.
Thanks very much. If you wouldn't mind moving me back to host, that would be awesome.
How do I?
So you click on the three little buttons.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay,
there you go. Perfect.
Perfect. Now, so that we can keep sort of things under control, if you guys have a question, if you could please type it in the chat at the bottom of your screen, and then I'll happily ask. If not, now I'm waiting for it to fill up. Does anybody have a question that they are ready to ask, Stephen?
Sure.
Who wants to be first? Oh, hang on. We have one from Graham Dragoshoff. So 926 businesses were surveyed for COVID-19 impacts on business. Is this representative of the population of businesses?
Yeah, I think we always want to make sure that we have a higher number, but I think the 920 some is a representative size. We have 60,000 businesses, but the reality is we're not trying to kind of get a percentage of that. We're trying to get a representative sample of the businesses. So 900 and the 30 that we did have is a significant and representative sample that cross-cuts not only one particular industry, but it cross-cuts a number of different industries as well.
Next is just a comment from George Pedersen, and congratulations on your focus on innovation and recognizing the value of partnerships to facilitate growth.
Thank you.
Good. So more questions. Who's next?
Can I ask a question?
Please, Alan.
Thank you, Stephen. That was most interesting. I happened, you and I haven't met before. I'm a retired architect, but spend most of my life right now with the Heritage Railway, as you may have heard. However, a part of my previous architectural practice was very much involved in economic development. And so I have somewhat of a background and somewhat of an interest. I'm also a past president of the Surrey Board of Trade, as well as a member of the Cloverdale Chamber. And my question to you is, looking at how you've outlined everything you're doing, what kind of working relationship do you have with the Surrey Board of Trade? I know Anita very well, of course, and all their various initiatives. I'm wondering, are you working with the Board of Trade and Chambers so you can develop some of the synergies and sort of build on some of the joint contacts?
Yeah, and I think that's a really great thing. And I think, as a matter of fact, this is actually the second time I've done this presentation. Actually, I actually did this presentation for the Surrey Board of Trade a few weeks ago. And so Anita actually participates in our Investment and Innovation Impact Committee, which is a city committee. And so, for her, she actually knows a lot of what we're doing at the city, and she's also very, vocal, of course, in terms of what she'd like to see. And so we've taken a lot of the feedback, and where it's appropriate, we've definitely incorporated into what we do. I think one of the things that we actually, as a city, need our businesses and our chambers to kind of do a little bit more. And it's not saying that you guys are doing enough and doing a great job, but I think it's the fact that right now, as we enter the second phase of COVID, what I would encourage the boards and the chambers to do is really work with the businesses to kind of understand how they can get resources in terms of encouraging staff to stay home if they're sick. I know just yesterday when we did a quick poll of businesses, a lot of businesses still didn't know that there was a Canada Recovery Sick Benefit, for example. Mm-hmm. And if employees don't know that they will be paid if they are sick, even not by their employers, the federal government will subsidize this. And it's very important for people who are sick to stay home. And I think messages like this could be amplified by the boards of trade and the chambers of commerce. And I think there's a lot of these kind of messages, which I think you guys have done, but I think what we can do is maybe do a stronger message out there together.
Can I ask another question, Scott?
Sure.
as I mentioned a couple of seconds ago, I'm a retired architect. Now, I did notice on one of your slides, you had as to one of the ambitions is to enhance or to expedite permitting. And I know all about permitting, and I know how difficult it is. Been very involved in that side of it. I know there's been many attempts at the city to kind of cut red tape, but there's still quite a lot of stories. I don't know whether they're anecdotal or not, that even on the simplest things like doing tenant improvements, when people, that the timeframes and the requirements by the various people in the permitting, it can take many, many months, and some of it's incredibly onerous. Have you any view on that particular part? Because to be honest with you, to expedite business, if the permitting process becomes an impediment, then that's something the city can do something about. Have you any comment on that?
Yeah, so I think, we hear that quite frequently, that, people are having difficulty with tenant improvements and whatnot. And actually, as a matter of fact, one of the things that we do in our department is we work with businesses to kind of try to see what the issue is with a lot of these things. And, not just saying this because I'm a city person, but a lot of times what we see, especially in the community, is a lot of people apply for tenant improvement permits without really understanding or having a certified professional kind of do it for them. So what they find doing is they submit stuff to the city, and then the city reviews it, and then it gets sent back. And the contractors actually take a few weeks before they actually get it back to the city for their second review. So there's a lot of time delay between, sending something to the city, getting it back, for review, revising and stuff like that. And one of the things that, we've been advising businesses is try to kind of work on with a certified professional and try to kind of preparing a very robust package, so that once you submit to the city, we can kind of check all the boxes and try to go through that. The second thing is we actually do pre-application meetings, right? So I think one of the things that we were actually trying to do is work with people who might have questions before they submit their permit, to make sure that we've kind of addressed a lot of those issues and they know what to kind of expect through the process, so that when we see the packages, they go through a lot faster. And, we obviously don't want to tie down businesses. We had an N95 company in Cloverdale. We were working with them in April. They only got their space, their lease signed in August. And what they needed was tenant improvements in their space. They needed to build a clean room, a brand new clean room within their facility. It is possible to get your tenant improvements within 3 weeks. It absolutely is. But it was because they ticked all the boxes. They did everything right, and we had no concerns in terms of going back and forth. And they got their TIs relatively quickly, and record time. They were operating in mid-October. So I think there's a little bit of communications there that we probably can do in terms of educating the businesses, but also working through some of these issues as well.
I'm just, I wouldn't mind betting, and I'm stand to be corrected, other than myself, I'm wondering who else knows what a certified professional is. I've actually been one. I've done the exams. I've used to do it, but I suspect that most people around this table here, and I could be wrong, haven't got a clue as to what you're talking about.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Am I right on that? Am I right? Does anybody know what a certified professional is? No, not a clue.
So why don't you explain a little bit to the group?
Well, I mean, if people don't know what you're talking about, yeah. I hear you loud and clear. And yes, the city of Surrey was, I think, the second municipality after the city of Vancouver who actually invented the CP process, because basically, in a nutshell, the building code is so onerous, and all of its sections. I mean, it was about a 1-year process to even become a CP. It's incredibly, the whole building permit is awful. But what seems to be happening for smaller people who want to change a tenant improvement, very often a small business with limited resources will go into a space and they go to get a building permit. And what seems to happen is that the building permit department, and I'm not criticizing them, or the fire department, say, well, we've been looking at this building a long time. It needs a mega upgrade. So in other words, it becomes a triggering point. Yeah, I know it's been used before, but you know, the wiring's not up to date, the fire alarms are not this, that, and the other, fire separations are not there. And before you know where you are, what looks like this humble little project becomes almost a rebuild. And then the owner of the building says, "Now, I think I'll wait and tear it down later." This is happening all over the place with small businesses, single entrepreneurs. Large businesses, with everything according to code is fine. But it doesn't appear to be sometimes, and I do understand why, the latitude to allow a business occupancy to continue because it doesn't meet the code today. And then you come with another permit. What is the permit department supposed to do? To turn a blind eye? And because if it all burned down, then of course they would point at the city and say, "Well, you gave us a permit." It's a heck of a situation, and I do appreciate it. How do you deal with it? I don't know.
Yeah, and I think that's a question probably better for the planning department to kind of address.
And not the planning department. I think you'll find it's a permits and licenses department, but that's okay. It's a problem.
And sort of to chime in a little bit on your point there, Alan, I find that especially at being a small business that we are, the decision for us is whether or not we even embark on these sort of ventures. So if this building process permit process is so onerous, is it worth the expansion in the first place?
Right.
During COVID, I have a business to run too. So to me, it's a huge cost benefit trade-off. Do I try find someone who's a certified professional who's able to sort of walk me through this journey, or do I keep my doors open and 19 other people employed? I think that there's a lot to be said for the business owner who needs to make those value-added decisions of what can I afford to do, how much time do I have to do it, when COVID certainly didn't give me 3 months notice to say, hey, we're going to flip your business on its head, right?
Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, and for anybody that gets involved with a certified professional, unless it's changed, the certified professional is going to have to do a total code analysis of the space and all the implications in and around you, because that is part of the sort of analysis as to does your facility actually comply and what needs to be upgraded and what needs to be done. And one of the biggest scary ones, as you well know, is always exiting. How do you get out of the place? How do you stop the one place burning down the other place, and interconnected spaces? It's a huge problem with older buildings that over time have just been expanded, added to, various things have gone on. And at some point you draw a line. But in terms of small business trying to stay alive and trying to recover and expand, this is a huge issue. I don't know what the solution is, Stephen, but it is one that there needs to be quite a lot of education done.
Well, it sounds to me like you've just given me an idea for our next Zoom meeting.
Ah,
I'll get
could be.
the permits and planning department to come and ask.
I would say your permits and licensing would be, if there's anybody there that would like to do that, probably, if I could make a suggestion, if you can find a certified professional to join in that, to sort of explain what they do and how they do it, because it can be very, very intimidating, especially if you're a tenant and the owner of the building really doesn't want to hear about having to rebuild their building and rip open their ceilings and the floors and put in sprinkler systems and do all the rest of it. And all they want to do is to re-rent the space again so you can continue. And you come up against a wall, and it's a very big and expensive wall.
Yeah. So I'm just going to reel it back to your first question, Alan, with Stephen working with the business community. He also, every Friday, we've created, well, it's not every Friday now, but the chambers, there's 3 chambers in Surrey, plus the Business Improvement Associations and the South Asian Business Association have created the Surrey Economic Recovery Coalition. So we meet on a regular basis with the city, another gentleman from the city, Jeff Anderson, to get updates. And then Stephen joins us periodically to give us updates from his department as well. So, so I don't know if that's a silver lining with COVID, but the communication between the various chambers, BIAs, and the city now is on it. We're doing it on a regular basis, which keeps us all on the same page. And we've been working on several initiatives together as well to help business in the area.
Good.
Great. Any other questions? I would suspect Adam would come in with a question about how many printers does the city need, and do they have a current
Well,
printing guy to take
That's
care of their?
how come the city doesn't buy local would be my question. But you know, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
I thought it was a great presentation, Stephen. I thought it was well thought out. Obviously, you've got a lot of resources. It's exciting to be part of a city that's got so much opportunity. My only comment, like, business is hard. Right? It is damn hard. Going out and seeing people, like, you go to the industrial parks and they're operating, the parking lots of cars in them, but you've got, doors are locked, masks must be on, you've got a beam in, and they're in there doing work. So, I don't really have a question. It's just, a lifeline is good. We're doing the best we can. Here to learn and see what's going on. So I'm very hopeful for the future. Aside from that, I don't really have a question. Aside from how do we make it easier, where do we get more business? But those are the regular questions, right?
I'm gonna sort of throw it over to Abby too. Abby works for DFC events, or sorry, not DF, for every occasion. Sorry, she's one of the partners with DFC events on our Clovis committee. And so I just wanted to know, has the city, and I don't know if you could even answer this question, is with the impact of the events, obviously there's going to be no rodeo in 2021. What do you see as the long-term, or how quick do you think we can get back to business as normal once the vaccine has everybody's been vaccinated? Do you have any sense as a city planning for that?
Thanks, Scott.
Abby?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
We're just kind of at the mercy of the provincial health officer. It's really up to them on how we can proceed. I think a lot of us in this industry, when I speak to a lot of people, whether they're event planners or bakery shops, we were doing okay when we could have at least 50 people in an event. We were managing to get by. Having the restrictions of 10 people for a wedding or any type of gathering, well, it's basically a wedding or a funeral, 10 people, and any other gathering in your home is not allowed. So that impact just basically just shut it back down for us. So, we were kind of seeing a light when we had the 50 people, and people were getting, a little bit used to that. We were starting to see people come to us about wedding planning for 2021, knowing that, if they could at least have 50 guests or 50 people in attendance, then they would work with that. And if things change for bigger, then, it was easy for them to adjust for bigger numbers. So ultimately, it's really up to the provincial health order of what we can do to move forward. I know people are trying to be innovative and doing things, but in keeping connections with their, previous business networks and stuff. And we've been trying to keep innovative in what we can do, but it's really not the same. When we look at our revenue, we're down 80% for this year. And really, if we didn't have the financial supports that are in place for small businesses, the loans and the rent subsidy, we would have to close doors a long time ago.
Thanks for helping me with that. I was stumbling through trying to come up with the question for Steve. My question was, when do we start planning? Like, when is, because of the end, we can see the light at the end of the tunnel now. And is the city now pre-planning for when the vaccine's rolled out and things start getting back to normal?
Yeah, that's an interesting kind of question, because I think, when do you start planning? I think you always keep planning, and I think you plan for different phases of different time. So what I would say right now is you're planning for a 3, 4, 5 month window right now. What are you going to be planning for your immediate kind of future? If you kind of look at the trajectory of the virus, there's a pattern for how the transmission kind of happens. And, if we kind of look at if previous history is any predictor of what's going to happen, what I suspect is it's going to follow a same pattern as we saw in 2020, as what we're going to see in 2021. So what that means is if all goes the same way, what I suspect is probably April, May, Bonnie Henry might have a different version of things, but we could probably see that, you know, in the summertime, things might ease up as cases kind of ease as well because of the temperature and the seasonality. And then I think once you kind of start seeing, the vaccine being rolled out, and I think the number that you've been hearing from PHSA and a lot of the other health agencies is 70% of the population, 70 to 80% of the population being vaccinated. I think that's when you start kind of seeing normality in whatnot. So, in short, plan for the different phases. Plan for the next 4 or 5 months. What are you going to be doing in the immediate term to kind of get to the next phase, which is probably your April to September kind of timeframe. And then hopefully by September, when everyone's vaccinated, what will that look like? The reality is even if everyone's vaccinated, I don't think we really understand what that's going to look like yet. Will that mean that everything will just kind of open up, all the restrictions are gone? Or will there be a phased kind of reopening? Who knows? And I think those are the kind of things that we need to kind of consider as well.
Great. And George Pedersen has a question.
I think.
There. No, we still can't hear you. Sorry, George, we're losing. You're muted still.
You need to choose your microphone.
Scroll with your microphone. If you want to type in your question, I'd be happy to ask for you.
So maybe while he's doing that, maybe I can ask you guys a question, and maybe we can kind of do a show of hands here. And it's more for my interest is how many of you guys potentially have had staff confirmed COVID?
At which, sorry?
Have any of you had any COVID positive cases in your workplaces?
No.
Not directly, but I do know of people that I associate with that have had and had to stay home.
So I was at the Canada Post distribution station in Cloverdale on last week, and I was chatting with the lady at the counter, and she said about spending how much time I was spending in there. She said, "You don't want to spend any time in here. You wouldn't believe how many COVID cases we've had."
Wow.
So, but they're a big workplace. It's a factory type atmosphere. So.
Can you expand a little bit on the Sparks program, Stephen? I think I saw it in one of the emails that comes out, but I never actually joined.
Yeah, so it's really our business outreach program. So I have a team of 4 staff right now, and they're all tasked with kind of talking to businesses and really having an in-depth kind of understanding of what the business needs are. What we do is, we talk to businesses. They kind of build relations. If you guys have a permitting issue or whatever it is, they're kind of like the one-stop shop into the city, and they can kind of be your champion for, whatever city issues you might have. We've had people come in and say, hey, there's some illegal parking in front of my business. I haven't bothered to call bylaws. We can kind of take care of that for you. If you have like inquiries into, how do you potentially, get access to some information, we can kind of do that. But, a lot of times what we also hear is, there's industry specific challenges that affect businesses. And what we want to do is after we talk to one particular business, our staff actually go and talk to a number of other businesses within that same industry to see if there's something that we can do at an industry level to kind of really move the dial on some of these topics or issues. The PPE one was an example. Like we heard loud and clear that people weren't able to get PPE. So we actually invested quite a bit of resources, time, effort, and money into building that out. And now that's a multi-million-dollar industry that we have brand new in Surrey. So that's kind of how we work. And it all stems with one conversation with one business at a time.
Good. So I've got George's question now. And the question is, how important is foreign money in financing residential and commercial real estate, either through purchases or providing loans? Is the importance growing or falling relative to past years?
In Surrey, I don't think it's as big of an issue, to be completely honest. I think what you're probably seeing in Surrey is it's still mostly local money. Yeah, there are people who are what you would consider foreigners investing. But what I would say is they're actually more permanent residents or people looking for housing. We don't have the same issue as you would see in Vancouver or elsewhere, where you have foreign home buyers or foreign investors kind of flooding the market with foreign money. No, what we see is these are major institutional players or local players who are getting in on the industry. Most of the companies that I deal with that are looking at foreign direct investment, they're looking at doing a tech deal. And so what that means is they're looking to set up shop here, and they're not really necessarily interested in the real estate whatsoever. They're happy with leases.
That answer your question, George? Okay, perfect. Anybody have a question to help us wrap it up? No. Well, we might escape a minute or two early, but before we leave, I just want to mention tomorrow I have George Pedersen is speaking as well at the same time, and George is an economist. I don't know if your microphone's working, if you want to kind of mention what you'll be talking about. No, we still can't hear you. So what I'll say is going to be really, really interesting as well. So we're spending a few minutes with us again tomorrow. I think he's typing now, so I'll wait. Well, I'll keep yapping for a sec while George types what he's going to be talking about. And while George is typing, I'll just say thank you very much, Stephen. I mean, I'm lucky enough to get to communicate with you quite often. I always like to hang out with people that are smarter than me, and Stephen's definitely smarter than I am. And I've learned a lot, and he's helped me in my role at the Chamber of Commerce, so for which I appreciate very much. George is still talking.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
Just wondering if Stephen or you perhaps have any update on the Warner Brothers film Instant City set up there in the Cloverdale fairgrounds. From what I read, they've got, I think, what, a 5-year lease or something. It does look like it has a lot of potential. Are you able to comment on that whole thing?
I'd have to get some more information from our filming guys. I just know that they signed a lease and they're looking to kind of do something. I think the reality is Warner Brothers is just one of many people who are looking at Surrey right now, and I think that's something to keep in mind. Like if you just drive a little bit farther south into Campbell Heights, like just last year, Ridley Scott was there, kind of doing a big film. They kind of had a big plot of land there that they kind of leased for like 6 months. We always constantly have a number of other developments in and out of the area, and Cloverdale is one of those places that film wants to be. Right?
Have you actually seen? Have you seen as to what they built there in Cloverdale, Stephen?
Yeah, it's a town, Smallville.
Yeah.
It's kind of like an instant town.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and they did something similar in Campbell Heights. That's what I mean.
Did they? I didn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah, they it was a post-apocalyptic World War II.
Oh, really? Oh my God.
It was pretty epic.
And,
yeah. Okay.
We had The Flash was filming in Cloverdale yesterday. We've had lots of Hallmark movies, and when you see a big production move in, you can tell the difference. It was quite the production here yesterday with like top end directors, production people. It was pretty amazing. And from what I understand, like Netflix is looking at the extended area, and there's supposedly another big movie going in South Surrey where they're going to be building an ocean. And I don't know if I'm allowed to say anything, but because I don't know if I know what I'm supposed to know, so I'll just keep my mouth shut on that one. But it's amazing because I get to be front row seat for a lot of the filming going on here.
We've had 3 different films made down at our station in Cloverdale and sort of on the train, and sort of at this very moment, there's I think two different companies that are showing some interest, and anything to do with railways and stations and that they kind of like that for some reason.
So I have one more question for Stephen, then I've got something from George I'll read out. So Mimi Leong would like to know, could you please elaborate on the data framework that will be available next year?
Yeah, so if you kind of look at the Surrey Open Data Open Library, there's a lot of stuff there, but it's actually not the most comprehensive set of data that we can probably provide. So what we're actually going to be moving towards as a division is we're going to be providing more data analytics and more data related services, so that when businesses come in, they're looking for, how many businesses are there within my area? What type of businesses are they? Or even questions around, who's looking for lollipops, or who's looking for coffee? Who's the consumer of these things? We should be able to provide customer profiles based on community, and we can allow this information to be shared with the various businesses, so that if you guys are looking at making data-driven decisions, you guys can kind of trust these sources that we will be able to aggregate and provide free of charge for businesses. And there will be a self-help version of this where you can kind of log in and kind of look at the dashboard. But we'll also be donating some curated services based on the business needs. So obviously we can't do it for everyone, but there's a number of different applications that we're just sorting through right now. But that's kind of the gist of it in a nutshell.
Great. And now my plug for tomorrow's presentation. So George is going to be discussing major factors that will impact the economy in the short and medium term: employment growth, housing, investment, and the psychology of consumers and business executives, how it will impact spending and investment growth. He'll provide some historical examples from his past forecasts of major turning points, and the presentation will be very thought-provoking. And I've heard George speak before as well, and it's also very educational. So again, another great reason to come and join a Zoom meeting tomorrow, which you can sign up for on the cloverdale-chamber.ca. But without further ado, again, I'd like to thank Stephen very much for taking an hour out of your day to spend it with our members. I will be making the recording available as well for anybody that would like to see it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Cheers.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.